What's up, guys? Max here. In today's video, I want to talk about a fun little story. I want to start doing more kind of story-based videos, talking about past experiences, past journey stories that I've gone through personally, professionally. I've already talked in the past on the channel about my addiction. I'm going to be talking more about that as well because I think it's a really important topic and really want to support people. But for today's video, we're going to go a little more upbeat, a little less dark, and talk about my very first startup. So I started my first company, and specifically, let me backtrack. Not just going to talk about startup, talk about how we raised our first professional round of funding. So outside friends and family, how we got a big angel in part of a group to invest $500,000 into our startup, which at the time was massive for me as a 22-year-old, my first company just out of college. This was game changing for the business, and it was done in a very unconventional way. It was done not a traditional VC route, not the traditional Silicon Valley route. So I want to talk about that story, kind of some takeaways and how that can help you and your thinking in your business. So my first company was called the Daily 100. And we started it, my partner and friend, Nick Haas, and I, we both went to Emory together. Then we kind of parted ways. I went to Babson. He continued at Emory. And he reached out to me at the end of my senior year at Babson and said, "Hey, I have this idea for a startup. I know back in the dorms, we used to talk business all the time, startup ideas all the time, and wondered if you want to start with me." And I said, "Yeah, I'm in," right? I didn't really know what my purpose was. I knew I just wanted to start a business and be an entrepreneur. And long story short, I'm not going to get into the details of the business and stuff and what we did and all that, because that's a whole nother episode we can talk about. But it was a tech-based company. And both Nick and I were just out of college. Neither of us knew how to code. Neither of us had built a business before. We had really little to no experience, and we were trying to build this massive tech company. And we needed an iPhone app, an Android app, a web platform, a back end, a front end. We needed all these things. We had the vision and the idea, but no developing skills. And so we bootstrapped, we did friends and family, and put together some cash. And that allows us to begin to build a team, get some engineers on board, and start the kind of beta process of building out this platform. But quickly, your burn rate when you're a startup goes up and up and up. And, in the startup world, this is why I don't really do this anymore. I kind of crossed over and changed what I focused on after this because of this reason, which is the Silicon Valley model. The mindset is build, 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 acquire users, growth, and worry about money later, right? Just keep raising capital, keep funding, and eventually you either go public, sell, or you'll figure out how to make money, right? That's the model. And it's a really terrible, flawed model. But nonetheless, as young 20-something-year-olds, we follow that model because that's all we knew. That's all we saw, right? Is that's the way you do it. That's the way you build a tech startup. And so we quickly realized that, hey, we're going to need to raise a lot more money than we have in the bank. We need several $100,000, if not $1 million minimum, to really continue to run this and grow this thing for at least a year. And which in hindsight, in the grand scheme of things, now the budget we talk about is like a really small amount. But back then that was like all the money in the world to me. It's like, if we can get somebody to write a check for $500,000, like that's life changing. And so what we ended up doing is we went on a roadshow. Nick and I went out there and we pitched every VC group you can think of, right? We did the whole circuit. We hit every major city, and we heard no more times than I've ever heard in my life. We heard no everywhere. First of all, we heard no probably in 100 plus just emails of reach out, and then we heard no probably in an equal number of phone calls, and then we heard no probably 30 plus times in person, actually flying in and meeting these places. It is very, very difficult if you don't have an in or a connection to get venture funding. At least back then it was. It changed a little bit a year or two ago during the pandemic, and there's always these bubbles where it gets a little easier, but it was very difficult. And the big reason why it was so difficult too, we were based in Florida. We initially were in Tampa and then in Orlando. That's how I ended up in Orlando. And if you're trying to start a tech company and you're not in Silicon Valley or New York, really, it's very, very difficult because the way they look at it, it's similar to the way like a lot of the companies look at hiring from Harvard. It's like, hey, this kid might have a high GPA and be really talented, but this one is at Harvard, so we're going to go with this person. So when it comes to like funding these companies, like, hey, this company and this company both look really promising, but this one's in our backyard in Silicon Valley. They've access to all the talent. We can go meet with them whenever we want. We're going to invest in them. And so that was one of the big reasons why we were also struggling, beyond all the other reasons of like, struggling to hit certain KPIs and, not having the momentum they wanted, not having ins or connections, all those reasons. So anyway, we were at the point where we were really close to running out of money. We were very, very close. We couldn't ask any more friends, any more family for money. We had payroll, we had things to meet, right? Both Nick and I were not paying ourselves, maxing our credit cards. And our head of sales at that time, Chris, he was watching a TV show. And it was like one of those $1 million home shows, $1 million garage shows, whatever it might be. And saw this guy, Francis Wisniewski from Chicago. and saw his garage. And this guy's garage, we eventually went out and visited a bunch of times and spent time over there, is nuts. It is in downtown Chicago, but it is like literally like a 10,000 square foot warehouse turned into a garage slash Vegas themed casino. It has cars on lifts. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And since then I've seen it, met a lot of wealthy people. It's still one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Right, the dude had a Segway. He just segues around his garage. Right, um, so he said, "I'm going to call this guy." So Chris gets on the phone, calls the guy, gets his information, and pitches him. Says, "Hey, I saw you here," and he did a little more research on him and saw that he was starting to get into startup investing. He was a big hedge fund guy, so ran a very very large hedge fund. That's how he made all of his money. And hedge funds, they make big investments, big deals. But personally, with his group now, he wants to start doing some startup stuff, get in the VC world, the angel world, and so the timing was really good. So Chris said, "Hey, I saw that you're just starting to get into startup investing. You're looking for deals. I'm the head of sales at this really cool startup company getting massive growth, and we're actually raising a round right now. Would you be interested?" And so we sent the deck over, and he was like, "Hey, this looks really cool, really promising. Can you fly out to Chicago tomorrow and meet with me and my partners?" So we said, "Of course." So we hop on a plane. We fly to Chicago, Nick and I, and we're just so excited, right? Anytime you get to meet with somebody with money, you're like, "This could be it. This could be it," right? But we also tempered our expectations. But we get there and we just hit it off with the guy right away. He took us, his office was at the Commodity Exchange Building in Chicago, which is like, if you watch CNBC, it's like they do a lot of the filming there with Rick Santelli, I think, on the floor. It's like, it's really cool building. It's a really historic building. So it was an amazing experience to get to look at the floor, go up to their offices, meet with all these hedge fund guys, and pitch the business. And the pitch went really well. It was just, everything was aligning, right? The timing was great. They were just starting to look at some deals. They just put a big fund together to invest in startups, and it would just work. It resonated, clicked. And when we left the office, we were going to the airport. We got an email from them saying, "Hey, we want to do a deal with you guys. Here's a term sheet." So they sent over a term sheet pretty much same day, and they wanted to fund the entire round, $500,000 we were raising for that round, at a pretty good valuation. We were really happy with. And then we started the due diligence process, and it probably went 2-3 weeks, and we closed the deal. And I still never forget the moment where I refreshed my TD bank account. At the time I had TD, refreshed it, and saw it wasn't full $500,000 because there's fees and stuff and some legal stuff came out, but like it's like $485,000 in the bank account. I think we had like $2,000 in there, so it was like $2,000 of balance, and it was like a wire coming out for $485,000. And when you're 22 and have never really even made any money, you're out of college, you've never seen a bank account balance with more than a few $1,000s. This was like truly life changing. It just changed my perspective and everything. It got me so excited. And there's a whole nother story here I can tell about how our CTO at the time actually almost sabotaged the deal. I'll share that in another video because it's a whole nother lesson you could take from that, that we'll cover in a different video. But the takeaway for this video, why I share this story, is I think it's important to not get so caught up. And I've taken this lesson with me throughout my entire career, especially now as a marketer and an entrepreneur that has lots of businesses, is to not get caught up in doing what everyone else is doing and what everyone else has done just because that's the way it's done, right? So again, going back to the startup world, it's like everybody raises money the same way from the same people in the same locations because that's the way it's done and that's the way it's always been done. And sometimes it takes thinking outside the box and reaching out to somebody like we did that was totally off the radar, right? Like everybody was pitching the VCs. They get dozens and dozens and dozens of pitches a day, probably more than that, right? Whereas this guy over here had capital, a lot of it, but had no track record. He had no VC fund. He had no history. He wasn't getting deals, right? So he had the money, but didn't have the deal flow. Whereas over here, these guys had too much deal flow and not enough money to go around. So we looked at this guy. Hey, he's got what we need, which is the money. I don't care if he's got a big name, prestigious office. We just need capital, right? And so we were able to both help each other out there because we gave him a great deal. We provided him with a great opportunity to invest, and he had the capital we needed. And it was a lot less competitive getting capital from him because he wasn't seeing a dozen pitches a day to compare us with. He probably only seen a few pitches so far, and ours was really polished by that point because we've been doing it so many times. We've been on the road pitching, and our numbers started getting better and better and better. So it was just like the confluence of factors there of like right time, right place. We had really nailed the pitch. Everything had been perfect. So it's like the stars aligned there. And so again, just as like a takeaway, a lesson here, whatever you're struggling with, whatever challenges you're encountering, whether it's trying to get a specific deal through, whether it's raising capital, whether it's trying to get a strategic partnership, whether trying to land a client, whether trying to hire a key employee, whatever it might be, think about what is everybody doing? And is there a way to do something a little different? Is there a different market to go after? Is there a different individual to go after? Is there an underserved market that people just ignore for reasons that don't make a lot of sense, but they ignore it because everyone ignores, and that's why it's always been done. But there's no one's ever thought about, like, well, why are people actually ignoring that? And so I think it's always think outside the box, seizing opportunities, not thinking anything is too silly or too stupid or not legit. Like, again, cold called a guy from a TV show of Million Dollar Garages. Like, some people might have looked down on that. Some people might have said, I would never go to that level, right? Like, I'm not going to cold call a hedge fund guy on a TV show to raise my money. I want to go to Bessemer and A16 and Founders and Sequoia. Like, I want to go to those guys. That's the prestige right there. It's like, no, we need money to grow our business. I don't care where the money comes from. I want the capital. So that's the story for today. As always, guys, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you get all the videos. Hit the little bell so you get them all. Like, you don't get throttled there. Only see a few videos here or there. You want to get all the videos. And like I said before, in future videos, I'm going to be sharing more stories like these with lessons that I've learned throughout my career, both personally and professionally. I'll be diving deeper into the Daily 100 story, which is my first startup, because again, my first company I ever did, I ran it for over 2 years, and I learned almost everything I know today I learned during that 2 year window. It was a boot camp in entrepreneurship, in running a company. And I made every mistake you could think of. I failed so many times. I thought I hit rock bottom so many times, but I also learned so many valuable lessons. I learned so many valuable skills that have served me today as an entrepreneur, right? That I can track directly back to those days. So I'll be sharing more videos from that experience, along with more videos outside of that. I think the next video I'm going to do in the next few days, talking about how we got Kevin Harrington and his son Brian, his lawyer Jimmy, to decide to create a company with us called Quantum Media when I was just getting started after this company. So how we convinced one of the biggest guys in the world, biggest entrepreneurs in the world, the original shark from Shark Tank, to start a 50-50 company with me and Jeremy. How we're able to do that. It's a pretty fun story, pretty cool story. So make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss that video when it drops. And just let me know in the comments what you guys think of these videos. If you're enjoying them, show me some love in there. If you don't like them for a reason, also, I'd love that. Constructive criticism is always great, and it helps the algo anyway. So you can drop whatever comment you want below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.